Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the English Globe. We're so happy to have you here with us today for another educational and thought-provoking episode. Whether you're listening from Asia, Europe, Africa, or anywhere around the world, we want to say a warm hello and thank you for choosing to spend your time learning English and exploring global events with us. This podcast is designed to help you improve your English while also understanding what's happening in our world today.
That's right, Adam. And before we dive into our main discussion, we'd like to kindly ask all our wonderful listeners to support our channel. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the English Globe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future podcasts. Your support truly helps us continue creating valuable English learning content every week, and it means so much to us when you engage and share your thoughts.
Yes, dear listeners, we'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us where you are listening from. Maybe you're tuning in from Japan, the United States, or another part of the world. We're always amazed by how international our community is. Also, please share your opinions about today's topic. Do you think Donald Trump's visit to Japan will bring new opportunities, challenges, or changes to the relationship between these two nations?
Now, let's talk about what we'll be exploring today. Our topic is Japan welcomes Trump, a new chapter in US-Japan relations. It's a fascinating subject that combines politics, diplomacy, culture, and economics, all in one story. We'll discuss why this visit matters, what it might mean for both countries, and how it could influence global partnerships in the future. We'll use simple and clear English to help you learn naturally while listening.
This topic is important not just for people interested in politics, but also for anyone who wants to understand how countries communicate, cooperate, and sometimes compete on the world stage. Japan and the United States have one of the most influential partnerships in modern history. Their connection affects trade, technology, defense, and even global peace. When a political figure like Donald Trump visits Japan, it always attracts attention and raises questions about what's next.
Exactly. When we look at international relations, visits like this are not just about polite meetings or photo opportunities. They often represent deeper discussions about trade agreements, military cooperation, and global influence. For Japan, welcoming Donald Trump could be seen as an attempt to strengthen ties, manage diplomatic balance, and open a new chapter in communication between East and West. It's a move that may carry both symbolic and strategic importance.
For English learners, this kind of topic is also a great opportunity to expand your vocabulary and understanding of world affairs. You'll hear terms like diplomacy, strategic partnership, and trade relations, and we'll explain them in simple language as we go along. The goal of the English Globe is not only to help you learn English words, but also to help you think critically about real-world issues using the English language.
That's what makes today's discussion so special. We're not just talking about headlines, we're exploring the meaning behind them. Why is this visit happening now? What message does Japan want to send to the world by welcoming Donald Trump? How might this affect America's relationship with its Asian allies? These are questions we'll look at from both political and cultural perspectives, all while keeping our focus on language learning.
We'll take you step by step through this story. First, we'll look back at the long history of US-Japan relations and how the two countries became close allies after World War II. Then, we'll analyze Donald Trump's global reputation and how his leadership style has influenced international politics. After that, we'll explore Japan's goals, the economic side of the relationship, and the reactions from the media and public around the world.
By the end of this episode, you'll have a clearer understanding of not only what's happening in this specific political event, but also how world leaders use diplomacy to shape the future. You'll also gain confidence in listening to and understanding complex English conversations. We always try to speak slowly, clearly, and naturally, so you can follow along easily, even if you are a beginner or intermediate learner.
So, if you're ready, sit back, relax, and listen carefully. Remember, every podcast here at the English Globe is more than just a news discussion. It's a chance to grow your English skills and your world knowledge at the same time. And don't forget to comment below with your ideas and predictions about how this visit might influence future relations between the United States and Japan. We really enjoy reading your thoughts.
Thank you again for being here. We appreciate every single listener who joins our global learning family. Now that we've set the stage and shared why today's topic is so meaningful, it's time to move deeper into our discussion. In the next part of our conversation, we'll explore the fascinating history that connects the United States and Japan, a story that began decades ago and continues to shape our modern world today.
Before we can understand what Trump's visit to Japan means today, we need to travel back in time and explore the long and complex relationship between these two powerful nations. The story of U.S.-Japan relations is filled with moments of conflict, cooperation, and transformation. It's a journey that began more than 150 years ago when two very different cultures met and slowly learned how to build trust and work together.
That's right, Adam. The relationship officially began in the mid-19th century when American ships, led by Commodore Matthew Perry, arrived in Japan in 1853. At that time, Japan was living under a policy called sakoku, or national isolation, which meant that it had very little contact with the outside world. Perry's arrival opened Japan's doors to international trade, marking the beginning of its modern era and the start of contact between Japan and the United States.
For Japan, that moment was both shocking and transformative. After centuries of isolation, it suddenly faced the reality of global politics and industrial competition. The United States encouraged Japan to open its ports and modernize its economy. Over the next few decades, Japan quickly transformed from a traditional society into an industrial power, learning from Western countries but maintaining its own cultural identity. This transformation amazed the world and changed the balance of power in Asia.
However, as history shows, not all periods of this relationship were peaceful. During the early 20th century, competition for influence in the Pacific and disagreements over resources created tension. The situation became especially difficult in the 1930s and 1940s, when Japan's expansion in Asia and the Pacific led to serious conflict with the United States. This eventually resulted in one of the most tragic and defining events in modern history, World War II.
Yes, that war changed everything. The attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 brought the United States into the war, and the conflict between the two countries became one of the most intense in history. Cities were destroyed, millions suffered, and by 1945, Japan faced defeat. The use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki remains one of the darkest chapters of human history, and both nations still remember those days as a lesson about the cost of war and the importance of peace.
After the war ended, something extraordinary happened. Instead of remaining enemies, the United States and Japan began to rebuild their relationship. Under American supervision, Japan was rebuilt as a peaceful and democratic nation. The U.S. helped write Japan's new constitution, which included a strong commitment to peace and democracy. This post-war period marked the beginning of a new kind of partnership, based not on conflict, but on cooperation and shared goals for the future.
That period of rebuilding also created one of the closest alliances in modern history. The United States provided economic and military support to help Japan recover, and in return, Japan became one of America's most trusted allies in Asia. This relationship was not only political, but also deeply economic. Through trade, technology, and industry, Japan grew into one of the world's largest economies, producing cars, electronics, and innovations that shaped the global market for decades.
By the 1970s and 1980s, Japan had become a symbol of success, showing how a country could recover from destruction and rise again through discipline, education, and cooperation. During this time, Japan and the United States worked together to build a strong trade relationship. However, there were also challenges, especially in the area of trade balance. Many Americans worried that Japan's exports were growing too strong, while Japanese companies were becoming global leaders in cars and technology.
That's true. Even though the two countries sometimes disagreed about trade policies, they always managed to solve their problems through dialogue rather than conflict. The shared democratic values and mutual respect between the two nations kept the relationship stable. Both governments realized that cooperation brought more benefits than competition. This period also showed how cultural understanding, learning about each other's way of thinking and working, was key to maintaining peace.
Another important part of this story is the security alliance between the two nations. After World War II, Japan gave up its right to maintain a large military force, relying instead on the protection of the United States. American military bases were established in Japan, and this partnership has played a central role in keeping peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region for decades. This alliance still exists today, shaping how both countries handle regional challenges.
In the decades that followed, both Japan and the United States faced new challenges: the rise of China, the nuclear ambitions of North Korea, and the economic competition from other regions. But despite these changes, their friendship has remained strong. U.S. presidents from both political parties have visited Japan regularly, showing that this relationship goes beyond personal politics. It's based on shared interests, trust, and the belief that democracy and cooperation can lead to peace.
When we think about it, the US-Japan relationship is really a story about learning and adaptation. Two very different cultures, one from the East and one from the West, found a way to communicate, collaborate, and respect each other. This connection has not only changed the fate of these two nations, but also influenced global economics, culture, and diplomacy. It's a living example of how former rivals can become long-term partners through understanding and effort.
And that's what makes Trump's visit to Japan so meaningful today. It's not just another political meeting. It's a moment that reflects the long history between these two countries. Every handshake, every agreement, and every word spoken during such visits carries the weight of decades of history and experience. Understanding this background helps us see why modern diplomacy is built on trust earned over time, not just temporary decisions.
So, as we continue our podcast, we'll move from this historical foundation into more recent times. We'll take a closer look at Donald Trump's political legacy, how his leadership style, foreign policy, and global image have shaped his interactions with countries like Japan. By exploring his influence, we'll understand why Japan's leaders were so careful and strategic in welcoming him and what they hope to achieve from this high-profile visit.
To understand why Japan's invitation to Donald Trump is such a big deal, we first need to talk about who Trump is in the global political scene and what kind of influence he has had since his time as President of the United States. No matter what people think of him personally, there is no doubt that Donald Trump changed the style of political communication and international diplomacy during his time in office. He left a mark that is still being discussed all over the world.
That's true, Adam. When Donald Trump entered politics, he came from a background in business and entertainment, not from traditional government service. He was already well known as a businessman, author, and television personality before he decided to run for president. This unique background gave him a completely different style compared to most world leaders. He spoke directly, often used social media to share his thoughts, and didn't always follow the usual diplomatic language that politicians use.
Exactly. His approach to politics was simple, bold, and often surprising. For some, this was refreshing. They saw him as someone who spoke his mind and represented ordinary people rather than political elites. For others, it was unpredictable and even concerning, because international relations usually depend on careful, balanced communication. What made Trump stand out was his confidence in making quick decisions and his willingness to challenge long-established political traditions.
During his presidency from 2017 to 2021, Trump focused heavily on reshaping America's foreign and domestic policies. His slogan, "America First," became famous around the world. It meant that he wanted to prioritize the interests of the United States in all decisions, whether it was trade, defense, or global cooperation. This message appealed to many Americans who felt their jobs and industries were being affected by globalization. However, it also created tension with some traditional allies.
Yes, and that's where Japan's position becomes interesting. Despite the changes in tone and style, Japan managed to keep a stable and friendly relationship with Trump. In fact, Japan's then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was one of the first world leaders to meet Trump after his election victory. Their meetings were full of symbolic gestures, golf games, warm handshakes, and shared discussions about economic cooperation. Japan worked hard to build personal trust with Trump, understanding that his decisions were often influenced by personal relationships.
That's a very good point. Trump valued personal connections and direct communication. He admired leaders who were decisive, and he appreciated loyalty. Japan's diplomatic approach was smart. Instead of focusing on political differences, they focused on building respect. Prime Minister Abe understood that friendship could help protect Japan's interests during uncertain times. Their partnership became one of the most closely watched leader-to-leader relationships in global politics during that period.
At the same time, Trump's global influence went beyond just diplomacy. He changed how world leaders used communication tools like Twitter to reach millions of people directly. This was something completely new in the world of politics. Traditionally, political messages were carefully prepared and shared through official speeches. But Trump's direct communication style made world events more personal and sometimes more emotional. This opened a new era of instant reactions and global debates online.
Yes, and this style had both positive and negative sides. On one hand, it made politics more accessible. People from any country could see what world leaders were saying in real time. On the other hand, it sometimes created confusion and tension because diplomatic messages need clarity and careful tone. Still, his influence cannot be ignored. Even leaders who disagreed with him paid close attention to how he used media, and some even began to follow similar communication methods in their own countries.
When we talk about Trump's foreign policy, we also see that he focused on reducing U.S. military involvement abroad while demanding that allies contribute more to their own defense. This directly affected Japan, which hosts several U.S. military bases. Trump often emphasized that allies should share the cost of security. For Japan, this was a delicate situation. They wanted to keep the alliance strong, but also needed to respond carefully to avoid tension. This made diplomacy even more important.
And Japan handled that situation wisely. Instead of arguing publicly, Japanese officials worked behind the scenes to explain their contributions and show their commitment to mutual defense. They used polite diplomacy, clear communication, and gestures of goodwill to maintain balance. This is one reason Japan is respected internationally for its calm and intelligent approach to foreign relations. It shows how cultural understanding and patience can solve sensitive issues even in complex political times.
Another area where Trump's influence was felt globally was trade. He believed many trade deals were unfair to the United States and wanted to renegotiate them. He withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a major trade agreement that Japan strongly supported. This move surprised many countries, but Japan decided not to give up. Instead, it took leadership in keeping the deal alive with other countries. This showed Japan's ability to adapt and lead, even when traditional allies changed their direction.
That's a great example of Japan's diplomatic maturity. Instead of reacting with anger, They responded with strategy. They maintained open communication with Washington while continuing to promote international trade cooperation. This approach helped Japan strengthen its global reputation as a stable and reliable partner. For English learners, this is also a lesson in how calm and clear communication can be more powerful than emotional reactions in solving real-world challenges.
Exactly, Julia. And when we look at Trump's global image, we see a leader who attracted both strong supporters and strong critics. In some parts of the world, people admired his straightforwardness and focus on national pride. In other regions, they worried that his style could increase political tension. But no matter where people stood, everyone agreed that Trump's presence changed the way international politics worked. Leaders had to adjust their strategies and learn to communicate differently.
It's also interesting how Trump's legacy still influences international discussions even after he left office. His speeches, interviews, and public appearances continue to receive attention around the world. When he visits other countries now, it's not just as a former president, but as a symbol of a certain political style. One that is strong, direct, and often controversial. Japan's decision to welcome him again shows how carefully nations plan such visits, balancing both opportunity and sensitivity.
You're absolutely right. Japan's hospitality toward Trump is not just a political gesture, it's a diplomatic calculation. They know that his opinions still matter in U.S. politics, and that maintaining good relations with him could benefit Japan in the future, especially if he plays another role in American leadership. This shows how Japan always thinks ahead, preparing for different possibilities while keeping its reputation as a polite and balanced nation.
So, when we look at Trump's political legacy, we see a mix of leadership, controversy, and global transformation. He changed the language of politics, made diplomacy more personal, and challenged long-standing systems. For students of English and world affairs, his story is a fascinating case study. It reminds us how communication, personality, and cultural understanding can shape history just as much as economic or military power.
That's an excellent summary, Julia. As we move forward in this podcast, we'll explore how Japan's government responded to this new political environment, why they decided to welcome Trump, what strategic goals they had in mind, and how this visit might influence Japan's role in the Asia-Pacific region. It's a story that mixes diplomacy, economics, and cultural intelligence, all explained in clear English to help our listeners grow their understanding of the world. Now that we've explored Donald Trump's political influence and how his leadership changed global diplomacy, it's time to look at Japan's perspective. When Japan decided to welcome Trump again, it wasn't a random gesture or a purely symbolic visit. Behind every handshake, every press conference, and every official dinner, there are deep strategic reasons. Japan always plans its diplomatic moves carefully, thinking not only about today, but also about the future political and economic landscape.
Exactly, Adam. Japan's decision to host Trump again reflects a combination of respect, strategy, and national interest. Many people might wonder, why would Japan still maintain such a close connection with Trump, even after his time in office? The answer lies in how Japan views stability, alliances, and influence. Japan understands that US politics can change quickly, and keeping a positive relationship with leaders from both parties, Democrats and Republicans, is essential for long-term security and cooperation.
That's a great point. Japan knows that the U.S. is its most important ally, both economically and militarily. So, whether Trump is currently in power or not, maintaining friendly relations with him helps Japan ensure it has good communication channels with any future American administration. It's like preparing for different weather. Even if the skies are clear today, you still keep your umbrella ready for tomorrow. In diplomacy, this kind of preparation is a sign of intelligence and wisdom.
Yes, and we must also remember Japan's unique geopolitical position. It's located in East Asia, surrounded by major powers like China, Russia, and North Korea. Each of these countries has its own ambitions and influence in the region. For Japan, maintaining a strong partnership with the United States is not just about friendship. It's a matter of national security. Hosting Trump again is Japan's way of showing that its alliance with the US remains firm, regardless of who leads America at the moment.
Another factor is Japan's economic strategy. The United States is one of Japan's largest trading partners. Their economic ties are massive. Billions of dollars flow between the two nations every year through automobiles, technology, energy, and other industries. By welcoming Trump, Japan signals that it values trade cooperation and wants to keep dialogue open about future business and investment opportunities. Diplomatic hospitality often helps open economic doors that political speeches cannot.
Exactly. In many ways, this visit is not just political. It's also an economic message to the world. Japan wants to show investors and international markets that it remains a stable and reliable place for trade and partnership. By inviting Trump, who is known globally as both a businessman and a political figure, Japan subtly connects its economic vision with a sense of continuity and cooperation. It sends a message of confidence to both domestic and foreign audiences.
And let's not forget about public diplomacy, the image that Japan wants to project to the world. Japan has always used soft power, such as culture, politeness, and symbolism, to shape how other nations perceive it. Hosting Trump with full respect and elegance shows the world Japan's diplomatic grace. Even if other countries have mixed feelings about Trump, Japan focuses on respect and neutrality. It's a classic example of how Japan turns cultural politeness into political strength.
That's beautifully said. Japan's diplomacy often works through quiet actions rather than loud statements. When Japanese leaders meet world figures, they emphasize harmony, balance, and mutual benefit. Inviting Trump was not about agreeing with every political view he holds. It was about maintaining communication, showing consistency, and demonstrating that Japan values relationships built on dialogue rather than division. It's a strategy based on patience and long-term vision.
You know, Julia, this also connects to Japan's long history of learning from different nations while maintaining its own identity. Historically, Japan has absorbed ideas from other cultures, from China, Europe, and later the United States, and adapted them to fit its values. The same philosophy applies to diplomacy. Japan learns how to deal with different leadership styles without losing its own voice. That's why its foreign policy is often described as flexible but principled.
Yes, and flexibility is one of Japan's greatest diplomatic strengths. For example, during Trump's presidency, many countries found his foreign policy unpredictable. Some governments struggled to adjust to his direct communication style. But Japan managed to stay close and maintain a respectful relationship. That's because Japan focuses on long-term goals, not short-term reactions. It doesn't rush to criticize or argue. Instead, it studies the situation, finds common interests, and builds bridges carefully.
That's something English learners can also learn from. In communication, especially in global settings, being calm, respectful, and strategic can help build stronger relationships than being emotional or reactive. Japan's diplomatic style is a lesson in emotional intelligence. It shows that listening, patience, and respect are not weaknesses. They are powerful tools for success, both in politics and in everyday conversations. Japan's example teaches us how to lead through harmony.
Absolutely. And beyond diplomacy and trade, there's also a cultural and symbolic layer to this visit. Japan knows that many international audiences still associate Trump with strength, wealth, and influence. By welcoming him warmly, Japan also shows confidence in its own global position. It's as if Japan is saying, we can work with all kinds of leaders because we believe in dialogue, respect, and shared progress. That's a message that builds Japan's reputation as a stable partner worldwide.
That's so true, Julia. And we should also consider Japan's domestic goals. Welcoming a famous global figure like Trump can help strengthen the government's image at home. It reminds citizens that Japan remains important on the world stage and that its leaders are trusted and respected internationally. This can boost national pride and unity, especially during times of uncertainty in the global economy or regional security environment.
Speaking of security, that's another reason behind this visit. Japan depends on its alliance with the United States for defense cooperation. With growing regional challenges, such as North Korea's missile program and China's military rise, Japan wants to make sure its security ties with the US stay strong. Meeting Trump, who still has influence in American politics, is a strategic step to reinforce that partnership. It's about preparing for every possible future scenario in US leadership.
That's right. In global politics, relationships don't just happen through governments. They also happen between individual leaders. Japan's leaders understand that Trump's opinions can shape future political directions in the United States. So, even though he is no longer president, maintaining a personal connection with him is a form of diplomatic insurance. It helps Japan keep communication open, no matter what changes come in the next American administration.
To sum it up, Japan's decision to welcome Trump again is a carefully planned move. It's not about favoring one person or one political party. It's about securing Japan's national interests, maintaining international respect, protecting economic partnerships, and showing the world that Japan is a country that values dialogue and diplomacy. Every part of this visit, from the speeches to the ceremonies, carries meaning, and Japan knows exactly how to use that meaning to strengthen its future.
Well said, Julia. As we continue our discussion, we'll explore another important part of this story: the economic ties that link Japan and the United States. We'll talk about how trade, business, and innovation form the backbone of this alliance, and why both countries depend on each other's success. Understanding the economic side will help us see why diplomacy and business often move together hand in modern international relations. Now that we've explored the political side of Trump's visit, let's move to one of the most important parts of U.S.-Japan relations: economics. Trade and business have always been the heart of cooperation between these two nations. When we talk about U.S.-Japan relations, we're not just talking about diplomacy or friendship. We're also talking about cars, technology, electronics, investments, and industries that connect millions of workers and consumers on both sides of the Pacific Ocean.
That's true, Adam. Japan is one of the biggest trading partners of the United States, and the relationship between the two countries has been strong for many decades. The United States exports many goods to Japan, such as agricultural products, airplanes, medical equipment, and financial services. At the same time, Japan exports cars, electronics, and machinery to the United States. This exchange is not only about goods, it's also about trust and cooperation between two highly developed economies that share democratic values and mutual respect.
Exactly, Julia. If we look back, economic relations between Japan and the U.S. started growing rapidly after World War II. Japan rebuilt its economy with American support and guidance, becoming one of the world's top industrial powers. In the 1970s and 1980s, Japan's automobile and electronics industries became world leaders. Brands like Toyota, Honda, Sony, and Panasonic became household names in the United States. These companies created millions of jobs, both in Japan and in American factories where Japanese companies invested.
And this is what's fascinating for our English learners. Economics isn't just about money, it's about relationships between people, countries, and cultures. When Japanese car companies built factories in the United States, it wasn't only about selling cars. It was also about creating new communities, new opportunities, and new ways for people to connect. Many Americans today drive Japanese cars that were actually made in the US, showing how global trade brings people closer together.
You're right, Julia. Now, Trump's visit to Japan brought new discussions about how trade could become even more balanced. In previous years, there were concerns about trade deficits. That means one country imports more than it exports. The U.S. has often imported more from Japan than it sells to Japan, leading to a trade imbalance. But instead of creating tension, both governments have focused on how to make trade fairer and more beneficial for both sides.
Yes, and Trump's approach to trade has always been very direct. He often said that he wanted to make trade deals that protect American workers while keeping partnerships strong. During his trip to Japan, he discussed how the two countries could cooperate more in new fields such as technology, digital economy, and energy. Japan, on the other hand, showed interest in investing more in American industries, especially in green technology and artificial intelligence, which are the future of innovation.
That's a key point. Technology and innovation are shaping the next chapter of U.S.-Japan relations. Japan has long been a leader in robotics and precision manufacturing. The United States leads in software development, digital platforms, and creative industries. Together, these two nations can form a powerful partnership that helps both economies grow. For example, Japanese companies invest heavily in U.S. startups, and American firms often collaborate with Japanese universities on research projects.
Yes, and this cooperation goes beyond business. It helps solve global problems. For instance, Japan and the United States are working together on clean energy solutions like hydrogen technology and renewable energy projects. They're also cooperating on building a more secure supply chain for critical materials, such as semiconductors, which are the small chips that power our phones, computers, and cars. These collaborations strengthen both countries and make the world's economy more stable and sustainable.
And for our listeners learning English, this is a great opportunity to learn new words like investment, innovation, trade deficit, supply chain, and renewable energy. These are common terms used in international news and business discussions. Understanding these words can help you talk about global issues confidently in English.
Exactly. And it's also useful to remember that trade diplomacy is not just about numbers. It's about relationships, communication, and understanding each other's priorities. When leaders like Trump visit Japan, they don't just sign agreements, they also build trust, which is the foundation of any successful partnership. Japan respects this kind of direct conversation, and that's one reason why both nations have managed to keep their relationship strong despite global challenges.
Another interesting point is how Japanese investments in the U.S. have changed the American economy. For example, companies like Toyota and Honda have built massive production plants in states like Kentucky, Texas, and Alabama. These plants employ thousands of American workers and show that foreign investment can be a win-win situation. In return, the U.S. continues to export agricultural goods, machinery, and services to Japan, which supports American farmers and businesses.
Yes. And there's something else that's often overlooked. Both Japan and the US are leaders in education and research. The two countries exchange students, scientists, and engineers. Many Japanese researchers study in American universities, and many American professionals work in Japan's technology sector. This human connection keeps innovation alive. When you combine American creativity and Japanese precision, you get world-class results.
That's beautifully said, Julia. It's like two different strengths coming together, American openness and Japanese discipline. Together, they make global trade not just stronger, but smarter. And in Trump's visit, both countries expressed interest in deepening these ties. They talked about not only selling products, but also sharing knowledge and skills that can benefit future generations.
Yes, and that's what economic diplomacy really means. It's not just about competition. It's about cooperation. Both countries understand that when they grow together, they make the world economy more resilient. Even during global challenges like pandemics or energy crises, Japan and the US have continued to support each other through trade and innovation.
And for our dear listeners, it's also a lesson about the power of connection. When countries cooperate in trade, they build peace through partnership. Every deal, every investment, and every exchange of ideas brings more understanding between people. Learning about economics in English can help you not only improve your language skills, but also understand how the world works.
That's so true, Adam. So, dear listeners, as you listen to this part of our podcast, think about how trade connects you personally to the world. Maybe the phone you're holding was designed in the US, but made in Japan. Or the car you see on the street was created by teamwork between American and Japanese engineers. These are simple but powerful examples of how international cooperation shapes our daily lives.
Well said, Julia. And that's why Trump's visit to Japan wasn't only a political event. It was also a symbol of ongoing economic friendship. As both nations look toward the future, their shared goals in technology, sustainability, and fair trade will keep shaping a strong and balanced relationship.
Now, dear listeners, let's move from politics and economics to something even more human: culture. Whenever a world leader visits another country, the way people welcome them tells a deeper story. Trump's visit to Japan was not just about trade or security, it was also about friendship, respect, and the language of culture. In Japan, diplomacy is not only spoken through speeches or agreements, it is also shown through gestures, ceremonies, and symbols that express goodwill and honor.
That's such an interesting point, Julia. When we talk about cultural diplomacy, we mean how countries use their traditions, art, manners, and national identity to communicate with the world. Japan has mastered this art. Whenever foreign leaders arrive in Tokyo, Japan welcomes them with precision, politeness, and respect that come from centuries of tradition. Everything from the choice of gifts to the tea served during meetings carries deep meaning. It shows that diplomacy is not just politics, it's also culture in action.
Exactly, Adam. Japanese people believe in showing respect through careful attention to detail. During Trump's visit, for example, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe arranged several events that reflected both formal diplomacy and personal friendship. They played golf together, which may seem simple, but in Japanese culture, such shared activities show trust and equality. It was a symbol that political conversations could happen in a friendly environment, not only inside conference rooms.
That's right. In the United States, political meetings are often direct and practical. Americans usually prefer open discussions and quick decisions. But in Japan, diplomacy follows a more subtle and patient rhythm. Respect is shown through formality, silence, and small gestures. When Trump was welcomed with great ceremony, it wasn't only about honoring him as a former U.S. president. It was also Japan's way of saying, "We value this relationship, and we want it to grow stronger."
And this difference in communication styles is one of the reasons cultural diplomacy is so powerful. The United States and Japan both have rich cultures, but they express emotions and respect in different ways. Japan's hospitality, known as omotenashi, is a cultural principle that emphasizes care for others, anticipation of their needs, and making them feel special. During state visits, this spirit is everywhere, from how the guests are greeted to the way the national anthems are played.
That's a beautiful concept. Omotenashi. It's more than just politeness. It's a philosophy of service and respect. In the U.S., the approach to hospitality is friendly and open. Americans often express warmth with smiles, casual conversations, and direct compliments. Both styles are positive, but they reflect different social values. Japan's quiet formality creates a sense of dignity, while America's openness builds connection through friendliness. Together, these two styles complement each other perfectly in diplomacy.
Yes, and when the Japanese media covered Trump's visit, they paid close attention to these cultural elements. They analyzed the ceremonies, the meals, and even the clothes chosen for official events. Many Japanese viewers appreciated the warmth between the two leaders, especially when Trump and Abe played golf and exchanged gifts. People in Japan see these symbolic gestures as signs of mutual respect. For them, cultural diplomacy is not just soft power. It's the true heart of international friendship.
It's interesting you mention media, Julia. In the United States, news outlets focused more on the political outcomes of the visit: trade, defense, and talks about North Korea. But in Japan, the tone was different. Many newspapers and TV shows focused on the atmosphere of the meetings, the hospitality, and the personal chemistry between Trump and Abe. This difference shows how each culture views diplomacy. For Japan, harmony is as important as results. For America, progress and negotiation are key goals.
That's so true. And for our English learners listening now, this is an important cultural lesson. When you communicate with people from another culture, words are only part of the message. Tone, behavior, body language, and timing matter too. In Japan, silence can be a sign of respect. In America, silence might feel uncomfortable. Understanding these differences helps you build stronger relationships, whether in business, politics, or everyday life.
Absolutely. Cultural diplomacy teaches us that respect is universal, but its expression depends on culture. When leaders like Trump visit countries like Japan, they step into a world where every action, a bow, a handshake, a meal, carries meaning. Japanese citizens value leaders who show appreciation for their traditions. That's why when foreign guests bow slightly, remove shoes when appropriate, or use polite phrases, it earns deep respect from the Japanese people.
Yes, Adam. And that respect works both ways. Many Japanese also admire American energy, creativity, and confidence. They see the US as a nation of innovation and opportunity. So, when Trump visited, there was curiosity and interest about what kind of message he would bring, whether it would be focused on cooperation, trade, or shared values. For many Japanese citizens, the visit was a moment of cultural connection, not just a political event.
Exactly, Julia. And this shows how culture can become a bridge between nations. Even when there are disagreements in policy or trade, cultural understanding helps keep the relationship strong. When people appreciate each other's traditions, they find common ground more easily. The smiles, gestures, and respect exchanged between the two sides often speak louder than official statements.
Yes, and cultural diplomacy is not only for leaders. Everyday people also take part in it. For example, Japanese pop culture, anime, and technology have huge influence in the US, while American movies, music, and fashion are very popular in Japan. These cultural exchanges build connections among young people, students, and families. It's soft power, power that comes not from weapons or money, but from influence, creativity, and shared experiences.
That's a great point, Julia. And it reminds me of how language plays a big role, too. English and Japanese are not just tools for communication, they're bridges for understanding. Many Japanese students learn English to connect with the world, and many Americans are fascinated by Japanese culture. This exchange of language and ideas creates a foundation for long-term friendship between the two countries.
Yes, and this is why we, as English educators, find this topic so inspiring. Understanding cultural diplomacy helps learners become better communicators and global citizens. When we study how Japan welcomes guests, we also learn about kindness, humility, and patience. These values go beyond politics. They're lessons for life, about how to treat others with respect and empathy, even when they come from different backgrounds.
Beautifully said, Julia. Culture teaches us that connection starts with understanding. In this visit, Japan showed the world that true diplomacy comes from the heart, from gestures of friendship, respect for traditions, and shared humanity. And for Trump, the visit was also a reminder that global leadership means not only negotiation, but also appreciation for other cultures.
Exactly. Dear listeners, as you reflect on this, Think about how cultural diplomacy works in your own life. Maybe you've met people from another country, studied their customs, or learned their language. Every act of understanding is a step toward peace. That's what we can learn from how Japan welcomes its guests. That kindness, patience, and respect can change the world more than power alone.
That's a perfect way to end this section, Julia. Culture truly is the soft power that shapes international relationships. It's not measured in dollars or weapons, but in goodwill and mutual understanding. And Japan continues to show the world how diplomacy through culture can create bridges that last for generations. Now that we've talked about culture and diplomacy, let's move to one of the most serious topics in international relations: security. For many years, Japan and the United States have been strong security partners. This means they work together to keep peace and stability not only in Japan, but across the entire Asia-Pacific region. Japan depends on the United States for military protection, while the U.S. sees Japan as a key ally in East Asia. This cooperation forms one of the strongest defense partnerships in the world.
That's right, Adam. The security relationship between Japan and the United States began after World War II. In 1951, the two countries signed a treaty that allowed American forces to stay in Japan. Since then, the US has built several military bases across the country. These bases are home to thousands of American soldiers, aircraft, and naval ships. They serve as a defense shield for Japan and help the US maintain stability in the region. For Japan, which has a peaceful constitution that limits its military actions, this alliance is very important.
Yes, Japan's constitution, written after World War II, includes a special article called Article 9. This article says that Japan renounces war as a means of settling disputes and promises not to maintain an army for aggressive purposes. However, Japan does have what's called the self-defense forces, a modern military that can protect the country if attacked. Still, Japan cannot take part in major military actions abroad. That's why the US-Japan alliance is so important. America provides protection, and Japan offers strategic cooperation, bases, and strong diplomatic support.
Exactly. And for our English learners, it's useful to understand that security cooperation means two countries work together to prevent conflict and keep peace. In East Asia, there are several challenges, such as tensions with North Korea, rising power competition with China, and disputes in the South China Sea. Both Japan and the US share the goal of keeping the region stable and peaceful. Trump's visit to Japan was not only about trade or culture, it was also about making sure both nations remain united in their approach to regional security.
That's a key point, Julia. During Trump's visit, both sides reaffirmed, which means they repeated and confirmed, their commitment to peace and defense. They discussed the importance of the US-Japan alliance in protecting democracy, freedom of navigation, and international law in Asia. Trump also emphasized that the US stands with Japan in case of any threat, especially from North Korea's missile programs or other regional tensions. It was a reminder that this partnership remains essential for maintaining balance in East Asia.
Yes, and many people in Japan understand how important this alliance is. The presence of US bases provides safety, but it also brings debates. Some Japanese citizens feel proud of their country's cooperation with the US, while others worry about depending too much on another nation for protection. This is a sensitive topic, and Japanese leaders often work carefully to balance national independence with international security cooperation. Still, most people agree that the partnership helps prevent conflict and keeps Japan secure in a complex world.
True, and this is where defense diplomacy comes in. Defense diplomacy means using military cooperation not for war, but for peace. The US and Japan hold regular joint exercises. That means they train their forces together to improve coordination. These exercises are not meant to provoke anyone. Instead, they show unity and readiness in case of emergencies. They also strengthen trust between soldiers and leaders from both sides. Such actions build confidence, which is one of the best ways to keep peace.
Absolutely. And let's not forget how geography plays a big role here. Japan is located in a region surrounded by major powers: China, Russia, and North Korea. That means Japan sits in one of the most strategically important areas in the world. The US presence helps maintain stability by ensuring that no single power dominates the region. When Trump visited Japan, he praised the country's efforts to modernize its defense capabilities and to play a larger role in global peacekeeping missions.
That's a great observation, Julia. In fact, one of the goals of Trump's visit was to encourage Japan to invest more in its own defense. The idea was to share the security responsibility more equally. The U.S. continues to support Japan's security, but it also wants Japan to contribute more financially and technologically to defense efforts. This idea of shared responsibility has been discussed by many American presidents, not just Trump. It's part of the long-term strategy of building stronger, balanced partnerships.
Yes, and it's interesting to see how Japan has adapted to these changes. In recent years, Japan has started to increase its defense budget and upgrade its military technology. But it still keeps its actions within peaceful limits. Japan believes in diplomacy first, talking before fighting, cooperation before confrontation. This philosophy aligns perfectly with the idea of peace through partnership. The visit from Trump gave both nations an opportunity to reaffirm that peace and stability remain their common goal.
And that's an important lesson for our English learners. When we study global affairs, we often hear words like alliance, security, and defense. But behind those words are people working to build trust and avoid war. Japan's example shows that even a country with a peaceful constitution can play a strong role in maintaining international stability through cooperation, and the US-Japan alliance is one of the best examples of how two nations can turn history into partnership.
Yes, Adam. And the alliance doesn't just focus on military matters. It also includes disaster relief, humanitarian aid, and emergency response training. For example, when natural disasters happen, such as earthquakes or tsunamis, American and Japanese forces work side by side to help people. This shows that security cooperation is not only about protecting borders, it's about protecting lives. The friendship built through these missions helps both countries grow closer in times of need.
Exactly. And we can see how these efforts contribute to regional peace. When neighboring countries like South Korea, the Philippines, and Australia see Japan and the US working together peacefully, it sets a good example for others. It encourages cooperation instead of rivalry. In this way, the US-Japan alliance doesn't only protect two nations, it helps maintain harmony in the entire Asia-Pacific region.
That's a very good point, Adam. And in today's world, security is not just about weapons or soldiers. It's also about technology, information, and trust. Japan and the United States are now cooperating more closely on cybersecurity and space defense. These are new areas of cooperation that show how both countries are preparing for the future. Their partnership continues to evolve, staying strong in a world that is constantly changing.
Yes, and this evolution is what makes the relationship between Japan and the US so unique. It's built on shared values, democracy, freedom, and mutual respect. Even when leaders or governments change, the foundation of the alliance remains strong. Trump's visit to Japan was one more chapter in this ongoing story of partnership. It reminded both nations of their shared responsibility to protect peace, stability, and prosperity in the region.
Well said, Adam. And for our listeners, this topic also teaches an important language lesson. When you hear about alliances and regional stability in the news, remember that these words describe real actions taken by countries to avoid conflict. Learning these terms helps you understand world events more clearly and also gives you the vocabulary to talk about peace and cooperation in English.
That's right, Julia. So, dear listeners, think of the US-Japan alliance not only as a military agreement, but as a symbol of long-term friendship and shared responsibility. It's an example of how countries can protect peace together without losing their independence. This model of cooperation has inspired other nations around the world to work for security through partnership, not through competition.
And that's the true meaning of security and regional stability. It's about balance. Balance between strength and peace, between independence and cooperation. When the United States and Japan stand together, they send a message that unity is stronger than fear. And for the rest of the world, that's a hopeful sign that peace is possible when nations choose dialogue over division.
When we talk about big political visits like Trump's trip to Japan, one important part of the story is how the media around the world covers it. Every country reports the same event in a slightly different way. Some focus on friendship, while others highlight tension or politics. Understanding these differences helps English learners build awareness about how news is shaped by language, culture, and national interests across the globe.
That's right, Adam. When the American president visits another country, the event becomes more than politics. It becomes a story told by the world's media. In Japan, newspapers and television channels such as the Japan Times and NHK used polite and balanced tones. They focused on unity, partnership, and cultural respect. Their headlines described the visit as a moment of renewed cooperation or a bridge between allies.
Meanwhile, American media outlets often used more dramatic and emotional language. Networks like CNN or Fox News highlighted different aspects depending on their political views. Some reports praised the meeting as a diplomatic success, while others questioned Trump's tone or strategy. This shows how the same event can be presented in many ways, depending on who is reporting and what story they want to tell.
Exactly, and that's why studying media language is so useful for English learners. It teaches how words influence opinions. For example, a headline saying Trump strengthens Japan ties feels positive, but Trump pushes Japan for trade deals sounds forceful. Both are about the same event, yet the choice of verbs changes the message completely. This helps students learn how journalists use vocabulary to shape meaning.
Outside the US and Japan, media reactions were also quite interesting. In Europe, many newspapers wrote about how Trump's visit could affect global cooperation. Some mentioned trade policy and defense alliances in Asia. In South Korea and China, headlines reflected regional concerns, focusing on how US-Japan ties might influence balance in East Asia. This variety shows how interconnected global news has become.
Yes. And it also reminds us that every news outlet has its own perspective. Some countries focus on economic results, others on political messages or public reactions. When English learners read articles from multiple sources, they begin to understand global communication better. They also improve reading skills by comparing tones, sentence styles, and vocabulary between Western and Asian journalism.
Another key idea here is media framing. It means how journalists choose which details to include or leave out. For example, Japanese reports showed scenes of cultural respect, like Trump greeting the emperor, while American outlets showed more about political discussions. Each frame builds a different public image. Learning to identify framing helps English learners become critical readers of international news.
And of course, social media played a big role too. Platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and X spread highlights, short clips, and personal opinions. Many users from both the US and Japan shared photos of official ceremonies and speeches. Hashtags like #Trump in Tokyo or #US-Japan. Relations became trending topics, allowing ordinary people to share their thoughts. This made the event not only political, but social and cultural as well.
The global conversation also included humor and creativity. Some users made memes or funny posts, while others discussed serious topics such as trade and defense. It showed how modern diplomacy is no longer limited to politicians. The public now takes part through social media. For English learners, this digital interaction provides real-world examples of informal expressions and international vocabulary.
In the end, analyzing media coverage teaches a valuable lesson. Every story has many sides. The same event can appear positive, negative, or neutral, depending on the writer's words and cultural background. By reading, listening, and watching news from different sources, English learners can not only expand vocabulary, but also learn to think globally and critically about world affairs.
Now, dear listeners, as we approach the end of our discussion, it's important to look ahead and think about what Trump's visit to Japan means for the future. International relations are always evolving, and events like this one often set the stage for years of cooperation or change. This visit shows that the U.S. and Japan are committed to staying close allies both politically and economically. But it also opens questions about how they will manage new challenges in trade, security, and diplomacy in the coming years.
That's right, Adam. Japan has to carefully balance its relationship with the United States while also maintaining good ties with other major powers such as China and South Korea. The visit reminded Japan's leaders of the importance of strategic partnerships. For example, trade discussions may continue, focusing on technology, agriculture, and green energy. Japan also needs to consider regional security concerns, like North Korea's missile programs, while maintaining its economic growth and international influence.
Exactly, Julia. From a global perspective, this visit also provides lessons in leadership and diplomacy. Strong alliances, like the U.S.-Japan partnership, can influence other countries to collaborate for peace, economic development, and technological innovation. Leaders can learn that successful diplomacy is not only about agreements and contracts, but also about trust, respect, and understanding cultural differences. It shows that nations that communicate openly can solve problems more effectively.
Yes, Adam, and for English learners, this is a great example of how global events impact real people and economies. Japan's balancing act involves making decisions that are not always easy. For instance, deepening ties with the US must be carefully weighed against regional relationships and trade dependencies with China. This shows how foreign policy often requires careful planning, negotiation, and foresight, which are skills that go beyond politics and can be applied in daily life as well.
Another key point is that diplomacy is ongoing. One visit does not complete an agenda, it starts a conversation. Trump's discussions with Japanese leaders set the tone for future negotiations on trade agreements, joint defense initiatives, and international collaborations. The outcomes may not be immediate, but they lay the groundwork for long-term cooperation. This is why understanding diplomacy is crucial for students who want to follow world events in English.
Absolutely. And looking forward, Japan is likely to continue modernizing its defense systems and investing in technological innovation. At the same time, the US may encourage more equitable trade policies and continued collaboration on regional security. Both nations also understand the importance of cultural exchange, public diplomacy, and media perception. These soft elements of diplomacy can shape public opinion and strengthen relationships for decades to come.
For global leadership, this visit highlights how power and influence are exercised today. Strong nations must balance strength with cooperation. U.S. leadership combined with Japan's strategic diplomacy can serve as a model for other countries. It demonstrates that alliances are most effective when built on mutual respect, shared values, and the ability to adapt to changing global circumstances. This is something that English learners can reflect on, not only as a news story, but as a lesson in leadership and communication.
Yes, Adam. And it's also interesting to note how public perception plays a role. People in both countries watched carefully, analyzing how leaders interact. Positive impressions can create goodwill, which supports trade, security, and diplomatic initiatives. negative impressions can slow progress or cause tension. The media, cultural gestures, and public engagement all contribute to shaping the future of bilateral relations. Learning these dynamics helps students understand how global decisions are influenced by both leaders and citizens.
Exactly. This visit also reminds us that international relations are not static. They require continuous effort, communication, and adaptation. Global challenges like climate change, technological competition, and regional security will continue to test the partnership. But the foundations of trust and cooperation shown during Trump's visit provide a stable platform for tackling these challenges together. This forward-looking approach is essential for long-term peace and prosperity.
Finally, dear listeners, we can see that the future of US-Japan relations will likely involve deeper economic cooperation, stronger defense collaboration, and continued cultural exchange. Japan's careful balancing between regional powers and the US demonstrates strategic foresight, while American engagement emphasizes leadership and global responsibility. Together, these actions will influence how both countries navigate the next decade, making this visit a pivotal moment in their ongoing partnership.
So, to sum up, the key lesson here is that diplomacy, trade, culture, and security are all interconnected. The way leaders interact, the agreements they sign, and the symbolic gestures they make can have long-lasting impacts. Trump's visit to Japan reminds us that strong, respectful partnerships shape not only two nations, but also the stability of the wider region. For English learners, following such events is a way to improve both language skills and global awareness simultaneously. As we reach the final part of our discussion, it's time to reflect on what we can learn from Trump's visit to Japan and the broader US-Japan relationship. For English learners, this is more than a political story. It is a lesson about communication, culture, and global understanding. Observing how countries interact teaches us the importance of patience, respect, and dialogue. These skills are not only useful in international affairs, but also in our everyday conversations, work, and studies.
Exactly, Adam. One of the key takeaways for students is the power of communication across cultures. From Japan's thoughtful ceremonies to America's direct approach, we see how different styles of interaction can achieve the same goal: building trust and cooperation. For English learners, noticing these nuances helps improve not only vocabulary, but also comprehension of tone, intention, and context. Learning a language is not only about words, but also about understanding people and their perspectives.
Yes, Julia. Diplomacy works when nations listen to each other, understand differences, and find common ground. The US-Japan alliance is a great example of this. Both countries have different histories, languages, and traditions, yet they collaborate on security, trade, and cultural exchange. By observing these examples, English learners can understand that patience, empathy, and careful dialogue are universal skills, whether you are negotiating with a colleague, a friend, or a foreign partner.
And it's also important to recognize how language connects us to the world. English often serves as a bridge for global communication. During international visits, leaders use English to explain ideas, agreements, and intentions clearly. For students, this demonstrates the practical value of English. It is the language of diplomacy, business, science, and culture. Improving your English skills opens doors to understanding world events and participating in global conversations.
Another lesson is the role of observation and critical thinking. When we read news articles, watch videos, or follow international events, we should notice not only the facts, but also the tone, perspective, and cultural context. For example, Japanese and American media often report the same event differently. Being able to identify these differences sharpens your thinking, improves English comprehension, and helps you become a more informed global citizen.
Exactly. And we should also remember the importance of soft skills. respect, patience, and cultural awareness. When leaders meet, much of the interaction is symbolic. A bow, a handshake, or shared activity carries meaning. These gestures teach us that successful communication goes beyond words. For English learners, observing such interactions provides examples of nonverbal communication and intercultural understanding, which are valuable in both personal and professional life.
Yes, Julia. And this episode shows us that learning English is not only about grammar or vocabulary, it is about connecting with the world. By following international events like Trump's visit to Japan, we see how language enables us to understand global challenges, cultural differences, and opportunities for cooperation. It reminds us that being curious about world affairs helps us grow as learners and as citizens of an interconnected planet.
And, dear listeners, we hope this episode motivates you to stay curious and explore the world through English. Observe how people from different cultures communicate, notice how diplomacy is practiced through dialogue and respect, and think about how international cooperation shapes the future. Every news story, every conversation, and every article you read in English is an opportunity to improve your skills and broaden your perspective.
Exactly, Julia. Remember, learning English is a tool to access knowledge, connect with others, and understand global events. By following examples like the US-Japan relationship, we learn that communication, patience, and understanding are as important as words themselves. Keep practicing, stay curious, and never stop learning. The world is full of lessons, and English is your key to exploring them.
So, dear listeners, let's finish today's episode with this thought. Every effort you make to learn English, every article you read, and every conversation you have brings you closer to understanding the world. Be patient, ask questions, and always stay open to learning. The story of US-Japan relations reminds us that cooperation, respect, and curiosity are powerful tools that will help you grow as an English learner and as a global citizen.
Thank you for joining us today on the English Globe. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you are listening from and what you learned about global communication today. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next episode as we continue our journey to understand the world in English.